A millionaire's son met a maid in the most unlikely place, and what happened next changed both their lives forever. This isn't just a story about class divides and impossible desires. It's about hidden truths, breaking illusions, and discovering that love often waits where you least expect it. Before we begin, comment below and tell us where you're watching from, because this is one love story you'll never forget. Cassian Duvall was the name that lit up Manhattan gossip columns. 27, devastatingly handsome, heir to the Duvall fortune, the empire that owned half the skyline. He carried himself with an arrogance so polished it gleamed, like his cufflinks, like the endless row of black cars waiting outside his penthouse. Yet no one knew how often Cassian felt like an imposter inside his own life, how suffocating it was to live in the gilded shadow of Victor Duvall, his father. One cold evening, as Cassian returned late from a hollow charity gala, he caught sight of someone new inside the penthouse suite. She wasn't part of the glossy crowd his family entertained. She was bent over, scrubbing a crystal vase stand with meticulous care, her dark hair escaping its braid, her curves framed by the simple uniform of domestic work. Her name, he would later learn, was Selene Araya. Selene wasn't like anyone who crossed Cassian's path before. She didn't flinch when he appeared at the door, his presence filling the room like an uninvited storm. Instead, she glanced up with calm emerald eyes that held something sharp, an edge of intelligence, a refusal to be invisible. "You're not supposed to be here this late," she said, her voice low, accented, the kind of tone that suggested she had learned to defend herself with words long before she ever stepped into luxury apartments. Cassian smirked, unused to being confronted by someone who technically worked under his family's employ. "And you are cleaning what your guests leave behind," she answered. Then, almost like a challenge, she turned her back on him and kept polishing the stand. That night marked the beginning of a dangerous fascination. Selena was not a maid by choice. Life had thrown her there. She was studying architecture by day. At a public university, no one in the Duvall circle had heard of working nights to pay off debts left behind by a father who disappeared years ago. She hated the uniform, hated the assumptions it carried. Yet in the solitude of the high-rise penthouse, she found fleeting moments to dream, sketches tucked into her apron pocket, visions of buildings she would one day design. Cassian, restless in his own golden cage, saw her sketching one night while she thought no one was watching. "That doesn't look like a dust rag," he murmured from the doorway. Startled, she nearly dropped the notebook. "You shouldn't sneak up on people." He stepped closer, ignoring the sharpness in her tone. "You drew this." He flipped the page before she could stop him, finding sweeping lines of glass towers, bridges stretching like wings. They were raw but alive, filled with a boldness Cassian had never felt in his own sterile world of polished architects on his father's payroll. Selene yanked the notebook away, glaring. "It's none of your concern." But it was. More than he could admit. Every encounter left Cassian hungrier, intrigued by this woman who wasn't afraid to call him out, who moved through his world like she belonged to a different universe entirely. And Selene, though she tried to resist, found herself unsettled by the way his blue-gray eyes lingered, not with pity but with curiosity. Their conversations grew sharper, layered with banter that flirted with lines neither dared cross. The penthouse, once just another glass cage for Cassian, became a stage for something intoxicating and attraction. Neither could name without risking everything. What began as late-night arguments over forgotten notebooks and spilled champagne glasses would soon ignite into something bigger. Something neither Cassian Duvall nor Selene Araya could have predicted, because love has a way of seeping into cracks, even in skyscrapers made of steel and secrets. And both of them had secrets. Cassian told himself it was nothing, just idle curiosity, a game to distract him from the endless expectations stitched into his life. But the truth was, Selene Araya had lodged herself in his thoughts like a stubborn melody he couldn't silence. Her defiance replayed in his mind, her emerald eyes cutting sharper than any diamond his father flaunted at auctions. He began lingering in places he'd once ignored. The kitchen at midnight, the library his family barely used. He timed his arrivals, too, when Selene worked, claiming coincidence even as he knew better. Selene noticed, of course. She always noticed. "You're stalking me," she said one evening, not even bothering to look up from dusting the shelves filled with untouched first editions. Cassian leaned against the doorframe, watching her with a lazy grin. "That's a strong word, I'd say. I'm observing." "You don't have to observe the help," she shot back, her voice clipped. "We disappear when we're supposed to. That's the unspoken rule." But Selene didn't disappear. That was the problem. She filled every quiet space with her stubborn presence. One night after another of Victor Duvall's suffocating business dinners, Cassian escaped to the balcony with a glass of bourbon. He found Selene out there, cleaning the glass railing, her hair damp from the misting rain. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, though this time it wasn't a dismissal, it was a confession. "And yet, I am," she replied, her tone steady. But her hands trembled as she wiped the railing dot for a long moment. They just stood there, the heir who had everything and nothing, and the maid who had nothing yet carried herself as though she had everything, worth keeping. Cassian broke the silence. "Why architecture?" Selene paused, lowering the cloth. "Because buildings don't lie. They reveal the truth about who built them, what they valued. Money can dress a man in gold, but the way he shapes his city. She looked at him then, piercing that shows who he really is. Her words cracked something open inside Cassian. Something raw he'd buried under years of champagne toasts and hollow applause. He wanted to know more. He wanted to know everything. But before he could press further, the sliding glass door behind them clicked open. Cassian and his father's voice, Victor Duvall, tall and sharp as steel, stepped onto the balcony. His gaze flicked to Selene, dismissing her instantly as though she were invisible. "Your mother is asking for you. Stop loitering with the staff." Selene's jaw tightened, her eyes flashing. Without a word, she gathered her supplies and slipped inside. Cassian watched her go, the echo of her defiance burning hotter than his father's command. That night, he dreamed of emerald eyes staring him down, unafraid of his name, unafraid of his wealth, and when he woke, he realized something dangerous. He didn't just want Selene's presence, he needed it. The need grew reckless. Cassian began orchestrating, excuses, dropping a glass on purpose, pretending to forget meetings, asking her questions he already knew the answers to. He tested the boundary between curiosity and obsession, and every time Selene tried to push him away, it only drew him closer, until one night, when he found her sketching again in the quiet of the kitchen. This time, instead of stealing her notebook, he sat across from her. "Show me," he said. Selene hesitated. The uniform she wore reminded her where she stood, what she risked, but something in Cassian's voice softer than usual, stripped of arrogance, made her slide the page toward him. He studied the design, a bridge, arched and elegant, spanning a river with bold lines that seemed to defy gravity. "It's beautiful," he whispered, almost to himself. Selene tilted her head. "You sound surprised." "Maybe I am," he admitted. "You see the world differently than I do. I don't know if I envy it, or if I need it." Her heart stuttered at the raw honesty in his tone, but before she could respond, footsteps echoed down the marble hallway. Panic shot through her. She snatched the sketch back, shoving it into her apron as the housekeeper entered, glaring at Cassian with suspicion. Selene didn't wait. She stood, muttered a sharp goodnight, and left him there. Cassian sat alone in the kitchen, staring at the empty space she left behind, and he knew with dangerous certainty, this was no longer a game. It was the beginning of something that could ruin them both. Cassian tried to convince himself that desire was fleeting, that once the novelty wore off, he'd return to his shallow indulgences. But Selene Araya wasn't fleeting. She was the kind of presence that clung to the corners of his mind long after she was gone, filling silences with questions he couldn't answer. Every time he tried to bury the thoughts, something brought her back: the faint scent of lavender from her cleaning supplies, the memory of her fierce green eyes daring him to look deeper. And deeper he looked. One evening, Victor Duvall hosted a private dinner at the penthouse. The guest list was small but sharp: investors from Dubai, a senator's aide, 2 journalists who owed the family more favors than they'd admit. Cassian played his role as the charming heir, glass in hand, tie knotted just right. But across the polished marble floors, he caught sight of Selene moving silently between tables, pouring wine, her uniform tailored neatly against her frame. She kept her eyes down, but Cassian felt the burn of her presence like a secret flame in a crowded room. When their gazes collided for the briefest second, it was electric, dangerous. He nearly missed the senator's joke, nearly gave himself away. Later, long after the guests had left and the penthouse returned to silence, Cassian found her alone in the dining room stacking plates. "You shouldn't look at me like that," Selene said before he spoke, her voice sharp but trembling. "Like what?" "Like, I'm not wearing this uniform." Cassian stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Maybe I see more than the uniform." Her laugh was short, bitter. "You don't. You see a distraction. Something thrilling because it's forbidden. You'll get bored, and I'll be left with the consequences." The words hit him harder than expected. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it back before contact. "You think I've never had men with money try this before?" she asked, meeting his eyes. "They all want the same thing. None of them care what happens after." "I'm not like them," Cassian said, his voice raw. "Prove it," Selene whispered, almost to herself. Then she gathered the plates and left him standing there, pulse racing, haunted by the weight of her challenge. The following week, Cassian did something uncharacteristic. Instead of attending the charity gala his father demanded, he slipped away to the Bronx. Selene had mentioned almost accidentally that she volunteered at a community shelter when she could spare the time. He didn't tell her he was coming. He only followed the trail of curiosity that had turned into something far more dangerous. That shelter was worlds apart from the glass towers Cassian called home. Fluorescent lights buzzed above peeling walls. Children darted between tables with crayons in hand, and the smell of warm soup drifted through the air. And there was Selene laughing softly as she helped a little girl glue pieces of cardboard into a model of a skyscraper. For a moment, Cassian didn't recognize her. Out of the uniform, in a faded sweater and jeans, she was radiant in a way the penthouse could never contain. When she spotted him at the doorway, her smile faltered. "What are you doing here?" Cassian shoved his hands into his pockets. "You told me once that buildings tell the truth. I wanted to see the truth about you." Selene's jaw tightened. but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something surprise, maybe even gratitude. "This isn't your world. Maybe that's why I need to be here," he said quietly. Before she could answer, the little girl tugged Selene's hand. "Miss Araya, is this tall enough?" Selene knelt, adjusting the cardboard tower with gentle fingers. "Buildings don't have to be tall to matter. They just have to stand strong." Her words weren't meant for him, but they rooted deep inside. Cassian all the same. That night, walking back through the rain-soaked streets, Cassian realized he'd crossed a line. This wasn't about distraction anymore. He was falling for her, not for the mystery, not for the rebellion against his father, but for Selene herself, her strength, her fire, her refusal to be anything less than whole. And for the first time, Cassian Duvall feared something more than his father's disapproval. He feared what would happen when Selene realized just how much power she had over him. Cassian's visits to the shelter became less of a curiosity and more of a compulsion. Each time he went, Selene tried to push him away, reminding him with clipped words that he didn't belong there. Yet each time he found some small crack in her defenses, a half smile, a question she didn't mean to ask, a softness that appeared when she forgot to guard herself. But Manhattan is not a city that forgives secrets, and secrets never stay hidden in the Duvall family. One late afternoon, as Cassian slipped back into the penthouse, rain dripping from his coat, Victor Duvall was waiting in the lounge. His father's expression was one of cold calculation, a predator scenting weakness. "You've been absent," Victor said, his voice like steel dragged across glass. "Where do you disappear to?" "Not your concern," Cassian replied, shrugging off his coat. Victor's eyes narrowed. "Everything you do is my concern. You carry the Duvall name. You don't squander it chasing meaningless indulgences." Cassian clenched his jaw, refusing to answer. But Victor wasn't finished. "I heard whispers," his father continued, "about a girl, a maid." He let the word hang in the air like poison. "Is that where you've been wasting your time?" Cassian's silence was answer enough. Victor's face hardened. "End it now, before anyone else sees. You cannot afford scandal. Not when the merger with Keating Properties is on the table." Something ignited inside Cassian then. Something rebellious and raw. "Maybe I don't care about your merger." Victor's hand slammed against the table, the sound sharp as a gunshot. "You will care. You will do as I say, or you'll find yourself cut off from everything you think you own." For the first time in his life, Cassian didn't flinch. He simply turned and walked out, leaving his father seething in the silence. That night he found Selene in the service corridor, arms full of linens. She startled when she saw him, nearly dropping the stack. "Cassian, what are you?" He kissed her. It wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. It was instinct. Fire, the culmination of nights spent in stolen glances and words left unsaid. For a heartbeat, Selene froze against him. Then, just as suddenly, she pushed him away, breathless, her eyes wide with fury. "You can't do that," she hissed. "Do you know what happens if anyone sees? I lose everything." Cassian's chest heaved. "I don't care who sees. I don't care about your uniform or my father or this gilded prison. I care about you." Selene shook her head, her voice trembling. "You don't even know me. You think you do, but you don't. You're chasing a fantasy, Cassian, and fantasies don't survive in daylight." "Then tell me who you are," he pleaded. "Show me." Her emerald eyes flickered with pain. "You wouldn't survive my world. Try me." For a long, aching moment, they just stared at each other. And then Selene stepped back, gathering the linens again. "Go back to your world, Cassian, before this destroys us both." She turned and disappeared down the corridor, leaving him with the taste of her rejection burning hotter than her kiss. Days passed with silence. Selene avoided him, vanishing whenever he entered a room. Cassian felt the weight of her absence like a hollow echo. But when he finally saw her again, this time not in the penthouse, but outside a small cafe in Queens, everything shifted. She wasn't in uniform, she wasn't the maid. She was Selene Araya, sitting at a corner table with a stack of textbooks and sketches scattered across the wood, her hair loosed around her shoulders. Cassian hesitated, but she noticed him instantly. "Are you following me now?" she asked, though her tone lacked its usual sharpness. "Maybe," he admitted, sliding into the seat across from her. "Or maybe I just can't stay away." Selene sighed, pressing a hand to her forehead. "You're going to ruin me." "Or save you," Cassian said softly. Her laugh was bitter, but her eyes softened just enough for him to glimpse something dangerous hope. And in that moment, Cassian knew there was no turning back, because what they were playing with wasn't just attraction anymore. It was fire, and fire consumes everything it touches. The first spark had turned into wildfire, and both of them felt it. Selene tried to retreat into her walls of discipline and duty, but every time Cassian appeared, whether in the cafe in Queens, at the shelter in the Bronx, or even in the quiet corners of the penthouse, they burned, and yet the danger of discovery hung over them like a storm cloud. One Friday evening, Selene left her shift early, clutching her sketchbook as if it could shield her from temptation. She needed distance, clarity. She wandered the Highline Park, the city's neon glow spilling over the steel tracks, a reminder that beauty could be carved from ruin. She didn't expect Cassian to find her there. "Stalking again?" she asked, but her voice lacked venom. He shrugged, slipping his hands into his coat pockets. Call it fate, or maybe I just know where to find you when you're trying to hide. She rolled her eyes, but a smile tugged at the corner of her lips. For the first time, she let him walk beside her, the hum of the city wrapping them in anonymity. They spoke not of money or debts or the Duvall empire but of dreams. Cassian confessed. He hated real estate dinners, hated the hollow deals his father called legacy. Selene told him about her mother who cleaned offices until her hands cracked, and her younger brother Marco who dreamed of becoming a musician, but worked double shifts at a deli to help pay rent. For once, their worlds collided without judgment, and when Cassian reached for a hand, Selene didn't pull away. But fire, no matter how hidden, always leaves smoke. Unbeknownst to them, a pair of sharp eyes had been watching. Geneva Lark, Victor Duvall's newest social conquest and the daughter of an influential developer, noticed the way Cassian's attention strayed during dinners, the way his gaze flicked toward the staff corridors. And Geneva was not a woman who ignored threats to her position. The following week, Selene found an envelope tucked into her locker at the penthouse. Inside was a photograph, grainy but clear enough. She and Cassian hand in hand on the High Line. Her blood went cold. The note beneath it was worse. End this, or I'll end you. Selene crumpled the paper, heart racing. She had survived too much to let herself be destroyed by secrets. She sought Cassian that very night, confronting him in the shadow of the penthouse's rooftop garden. Someone knows, she hissed, thrusting the photo into his chest. Cassian's jaw tightened, fury blazing in his eyes. Who gave this to you? It doesn't matter, Selene said. This, whatever this is, it has to stop. I can't risk my job, my family, everything I've built. Selene, listen to me. No, you listen, she cut in, her voice breaking. You don't understand what it's like to live on the edge. To have everything ripped from you because someone with money decides you're disposable. You can afford a scandal. I can't. The words gutted him, but Cassian stepped closer, gripping her shoulders. I can't walk away from you. I won't. Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Then you'll destroy me. She pulled free and ran, leaving Cassian standing in the rain, the photograph clutched in his fist like a curse. For days, they stayed apart. Cassian prowled the city like a caged animal, furious at whoever dared threaten Selene. Selene, meanwhile, buried herself in work and studies, her heart aching every time she thought of his voice, his touch, the impossible longing they had ignited. But cruel, relentless fate was not finished. One night as Selene walked home through the dim streets of Queens, a sleek black car pulled up beside her, the tinted window lowered, revealing Geneva's perfectly painted smile. You don't belong in his world, Geneva said smoothly. Walk away before you're crushed. Selene straightened, meeting her gaze with quiet fire. Fire, I thought. His world didn't belong to you either. Geneva's smile faltered, but only for a second. You'll regret this. The window slid shut, and the car pulled away, leaving Selene trembling on the sidewalk. She realized then that this wasn't just about a forbidden romance anymore. It was a war. Selene didn't sleep that night. Geneva's threat replayed in her mind like a dark refrain, her fingers gripping her sketchbook so tightly the pages bent. She had lived her life balancing on thin edges, but now the ground beneath her felt like it could collapse at any second. And still, despite the fear, thoughts of Cassian refused to fade. Cassian, meanwhile, had reached his breaking point. He stormed into his father's office at Duvall Tower, startling Victor from a meeting with his executives. This merger with Keating, Cassian said sharply, it's built on lies. You're forcing deals through neighborhoods that don't want you there. Victor's lips curled in a thin smile. And suddenly my son is an expert on morality. Spare me. You're here because of her, aren't you? Cassian stiffened, giving himself away. Victor rose, circling him like a hawk. That maid will ruin you. Do you think I built this empire for you to throw it away on a girl who scrubs our floors? She's more than that, Cassian snapped, his voice ringing through the glass-walled office. She's more than you'll ever understand. Victor's expression hardened into ice. If you choose her, you lose everything. No trust fund, no company shares, nothing. Cassian's heart pounded, but for the first time, he saw the bars of his golden cage for what they were, and he knew he'd rather lose the cage than Selene. But when Cassian tried to reach her, Selene wouldn't answer. She avoided him at the penthouse, left shifts early, disappeared from the cafe where she studied. Every locked door deepened his desperation until finally, he caught her leaving the shelter one night, the city lights spilling across her face. Selene, he called. Breathless, she froze. You shouldn't be here. I can't keep pretending this isn't real, he said, stepping closer. I don't care about the threats. My father, Genevan, of it matters. You matter. Selene's throat tightened. Don't you get it, Cassian? They can take everything from me. My job, my family's safety, my future. I can't gamble that for a love that might not survive the fire. It will, he swore, his voice breaking. I'll fight for us. Her eyes shimmered with pain. Then fight your father. Fight Geneva. But don't ask me to stand beside you while you do. Because if I fall, there's no one to catch me. She turned and walked into the night, leaving him shattered. The following week, the storm finally broke. Headlines splashed across tabloids. Duvall heir Linked to Mystery Woman. The photo, grainy but damning, showed Cassian and Selene on the High Line, their hands intertwined. Selene's world collapsed overnight. She was fired without warning, her paycheck withheld. Landlords suddenly demanded rent she didn't have. At the university, whispers spread until professors avoided her gaze. Cassian confronted Geneva, cornering her at a rooftop party. "You did this," he snarled. Geneva's smile was razor sharp. "I protected what's mine, and if you think you can save her, you're more naive than I thought." Cassian left rage boiling in his veins. He wanted to burn his father's empire to ash, to tear Geneva's smug mask apart. But first he had to find Selene. He found her in Queens, packing the last of her belongings into a worn suitcase. She didn't look up when he entered. "Don't," she whispered. "Don't say anything. I can fix this," he pleaded. "I'll pay your rent. I'll fight the papers. Selene whirled on him, tears streaming down her face. "That's the problem, Cassian. You think money fixes everything, but money is what broke me in the first place. Do you know what it's like to have your life destroyed by people who treat dollars like weapons? I won't let your father or Geneva use me like that." He reached for her, desperate. "Selene," she shook her head. "I have to save myself before I can believe in you." With that, she shouldered the suitcase and walked past him, her footsteps echoing in the hollow silence. Cassian stood alone in the dim apartment, the weight of loss pressing down on him. For the first time in his life, he realized he couldn't buy his way out of this. If he wanted Selene Araya, he would have to fight not with wealth, not with his name, but with something real, something he wasn't sure he had ever possessed until now. The scandal spread faster than either of them imagined. Cassian's face was splashed across financial columns and gossip blogs alike, each headline spinning its own narrative. Heir to Duvall, fortune loses control. Maid seduces millionaires. Son, romance or ruin. For Victor Duvall, it was the perfect storm, confirmation of his son's weakness, ammunition to tighten his grip. For Selene, it was devastation. She lost her job, her credibility, and, for the first time, the fragile stability she had carved out of hardship. And for Cassian, it was the line he could no longer straddle. Weeks passed, and Cassian moved like a man with a war to wage. He skipped board meetings, walked out on charity galas, and began appearing in neighborhoods Victor dismissed as irrelevant. He spoke to reporters, not about luxury projects or market shares, but about affordable housing, about architecture that served people instead of crushing them. Every word was a rebellion against his father, every choice a message to Selene. "I hear you, I see you." But Selene wasn't there to witness it. She had retreated to her mother's small apartment in Queens, sharing a cramped bedroom with her younger brother Marco. She worked double shifts at a bakery, exhaustion etching shadows under her eyes. Yet every night, she sketched bridges, towers, buildings that rose defiantly against a skyline designed to exclude her. She tried to bury thoughts of Cassian, but they surfaced in every line she drew. One rainy evening, Marco shoved an old newspaper across the table. "Look," he said, "your boyfriend's making headlines again." Selena's heart stuttered as she scanned the article. Cassian at a rally, calling for accountability in the Duvall empire, his words fiery, his expression raw. "He's not my boyfriend," she muttered, but the lie tasted bitter. Marco smirked. "Maybe not, but he's fighting like one." 2 nights later, Cassian showed up outside the bakery. He looked different. No suit, no chauffeured car, just rain-soaked clothes, unshaven jaw, exhaustion carved into his features. Selene froze when she saw him through the window. She stepped outside, folding her arms tight. "You shouldn't be here." "I had to see you," Cassian said, his voice hoarse. "Everything's falling apart. My father's cutting me out. Geneva's circling like a vulture, but none of it matters. Not without you." Her chest ached, but she kept her tone steady. "You think words change what's happened? That speeches erased the damage." Cassian shook his head. "Not words. Actions. Come with me." Before she could protest, he led her down the block, around the corner, until they stopped in front of a construction site. The rain-slicked steel beams glistened under floodlights, half-formed into the skeleton of another luxury tower. "This is one of my father's projects," Cassian said, "but I've been working with the city to redirect it. Affordable housing, community spaces. I used my shares to stall the financing until he has no choice but to listen." Selena's breath caught. "Why would you risk everything?" He looked at her, rain dripping down his face. "Because you showed me what matters. Because I can't keep building prisons when you've taught me what freedom looks like." For a moment, the world fell away through rain, the steel, the war raging around them. It was just Selene and Cassian, 2 people standing on the edge of everything. Selene's defenses wavered, trembling like the scaffolding above them, but before she could speak, headlights cut through the rain. A sleek black car pulled up, and Victor Duvall himself stepped out, flanked by 2 bodyguards. His fury was palpable, his voice slicing through the storm. "Enough." Selene stiffened, instinctively, stepping back. Cassian moved in front of her, his body a shield. Victor's gaze was lethal. "You're done humiliating this family, Cassian. Get in the car, now." "No," Cassian said, his voice steady for the first time. "This ends tonight. I'm not your puppet anymore." Victor's eyes narrowed, then shifted to Selene. And you? Do you really think he'll keep you once the fire burns out? Girls like you are disposable? I can end you with a phone call. Selene's blood turned cold, but Cassian's voice thundered over the storm. If you touch her, you'll lose me forever. The tension crackled like lightning in the night air. Selene realized, with a rush of terror and hope, that Cassian had finally chosen, but choices like his never came without cost. Victor Duvall didn't flinch under his son's defiance. His lips curved into a cruel smile. One Selene recognized instantly, the smile of a man who believed the world would always bend to his will. You're bluffing, Victor said. Rain. He slicked his gray hair, but his posture remained unshaken. Without me you're nothing. No shares, no inheritance, no name. Cassian squared his shoulders. Then I'll be nothing on my own terms, but I won't be your shadow anymore. Victor's eyes darkened, but this time it wasn't anger, it was realization. His son wasn't bending. Not tonight. The silence stretched, thunder rumbling overhead. Then Victor turned, gesturing sharply to the bodyguards. Leave him, let him rot with his mistake. He slid back into the car, the door slamming like a verdict, and the vehicle disappeared into the rain. Cassian stood there, breathing hard, soaked to the bone. For the first time in his life he had nothing, no safety net, no empire. And yet when he turned to Selene, he smiled. I meant it, he whispered. You're all I need. Selene's throat tightened. Cassian, you've given up everything. For me, for us, he corrected softly. If I have to rebuild from scratch, I want to build something real with you. Her heart pounded, fear warring with the fierce hope in his eyes. She wanted to tell him it was impossible, that love couldn't rewrite the city's brutal rules. But when he reached for her hand warm despite the cold rain, she realized she didn't want to fight anymore. Because against all odds, she believed him. The weeks that followed were chaos. Victor moved quickly, cutting Cassian out of accounts, stripping him from boardrooms. Geneva tried to spin the scandal into her favor, but reporters sniffed out her involvement in leaking the photo, tarnishing her carefully polished image, and through it all, Cassian and Selene clung to each other. They rented a tiny apartment in Queens, its walls thin and plumbing questionable, but it was theirs. For the first time, Cassian learned the cost of groceries, the frustration of late bills, the small miracle of watching Selene's sketches spread across their kitchen table like blueprints for a better life. It wasn't easy. The world whispered behind their backs. Tabloids feasted on their downfall. Selene faced sneers at the university, and Cassian wrestled with the weight of losing everything he had once taken for granted. But in the struggle, something extraordinary grew. Cassian discovered the freedom of living without his father's leash. He began working with community developers, using what influence remained to champion projects Selene had dreamed of: libraries, housing, public gardens. Selene in turn found her voice louder, stronger, knowing someone finally believed in her vision. And slowly, the city began to see them not as scandal but as partners: an heir who abandoned his throne, and a maid who dared to dream higher than glass towers. Months later, Selene stood on the balcony of their modest apartment, the skyline glowing in the distance. Cassian joined her, wrapping his arms around her waist. Do you regret it? She asked softly. He kissed her temple. Not for a second. Selene leaned into him, eyes fixed on the horizon. One day, Cassian, I'm going to design something that changes this city. You already have, he murmured, tightening his hold. You changed me. Her laughter mingled with the hum of the city below, and for the first time in a long time, the night felt full of promise. A millionaire's son had fallen in love with his maid, and together they had burned down the illusions of wealth, the cages of power, the walls of class. What rose from the ashes was not perfect, not easy, but real. And sometimes, real love is the only fortune worth keeping. If you loved Cassian Duvall and Selene Araya's journey, rate this story from 0 to 10 in the comments and subscribe for more incredible tales of love against all odds. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss another story. Thank you for watching, and remember, true wealth isn't measured in what you own, but in who you choose to stand beside. When the world tries to break you,